it for? It's never boring. I'm gonna take care of it.
We have the #1 show of late night, Deez and Meryl, coming to Showtime in February. We gotta get us some new chairs.
What about this?
Yeah, you wanna make a baby? Yeah.
We should make the set look like intake at Rikers.
Yeah.
Who would you like to have on the show?
First guest, Kim's new baby, in utero interview. Who's doing that in late night? Nobody.
I'm a baby, wah.
We can get guests to polish our shoes while we interview them. Boom. Let's go make a TV show.
Get it, baby. And I'm taking this with me too, bro.
As we get set for Showtime Championship Boxing, it is Countdown Live as we join you as we get set for Gervonta Davis putting his super featherweight crown on the line against Hugo Ruiz. But right now we have two preliminary matchups coming your way, and it's all highlighted by Erickson Lubin going head-to-head against the former world champion and Ishe Smith. Ray Flores joined alongside by the Hall of Famer Steve Farhad and Brian Campbell. Great to be here in Southern California on a brisk February evening. But let's take a look at Erickson Lubin and Ishe Smith. That is our main fight tonight. If you don't have Showtime, go to getshowtime.com to start your free trial now. You do not want to miss this triple header and the two fights that we have here on our social media pages. Steve, we'll start off with Erickson Lubin, who is coming off a devastating knockout a while ago at the hands of Jermell Charlo. Since then, he's picked up a victory now with Kevin Cunningham. For Lubin, a big step for him to be able to take on Ishe Smith. What are you expecting out of the 23-year-old?
I can't wait to see what Lubin is going to bring, because obviously the effects of a first-round knockout loss are psychological. Do you come back from them? Think of recent history. Abner Maris, knocked out in one round by Johnny Gonzalez, went on to win a world title. Peter Quillen, knocked out in one round by Daniel Jacobs. Have we heard from Peter Quillen since? So there's no guarantee you're going to bounce back. And in Erickson Lubin's progression, he's still a young fighter, so he can come back. But he's in with a very, very tough veteran who will test him tonight.
And absolutely, that tough veteran being Ishe Smith. But, Brian, before we get into Ishe Smith, you were around Erickson Lubin earlier in the week. Before we get to your interview when it comes to him, what is the demeanor that you have been seeing out of Erickson Lubin?
You know, Ray, refreshingly cool and calm, ultimately. A 23-year-old, but a guy who's been on our boxing radar for a long time when you consider he was a top amateur, turned pro at 18, rather than going the route of the Olympics. Was promoted by Mike Tyson early on. We got to get to know this guy. Unfortunately, of course, steps up to that big stage. We never got to see what his plan of attack would have been against Jermell Charlo, but he doesn't seem emotionally wounded from that, and that ultimately is the most important thing as you look to move forward.
Well, Erickson Lubin is quite confident as he gets set to take on Ishe Smith. Let's take a look at what he had to say earlier in the week in regards to Ishe Smith. He said that Smith has been in the ring with the best of them, and he's never been stopped. He knows how to fight, and I'm expecting him to be at his best. I will have to dictate the pace right from the opening bell. My goal is to be the first person to take him out, but if it goes the distance, I'm okay with that as well. I'm going to win this fight and win it impressively. Brian, those are some strong words out of Erickson Lubin.
Oh, absolutely. You love the emotion, and I think ultimately this has the potential to be a very emotional fight. Let's not forget, Ishe Smith is a veteran who wears his heart on his sleeve. Everyone remembers that 2013 victory over Kenan Bundridge to win his first world title. He was very emotional. Lubin has said, look, Ishe's been up in his feels all week, as the kids say. Sometimes you get hyped up, you get emotional, it plays out in the ring. I'm expecting action.
Let's take a look at the conversation that you had with Erickson Lubin earlier in the week.
Had the fight in 2017 for that title against then unbeaten Jermell Charlo. Right. Obviously didn't go the way you wanted to in Brooklyn that night, first round knockout. When you look back on that, what are the feelings? What are the emotions?
I made a few mistakes in the ring where, you know, he was able to catch me real clean. But I actually learned from that. You know, I learned a lot from that.
On that Charlo knockout, that was a step-up fight on the title level. We were going to find out how good you were going to be. You were going to find out how good you really are on that stage. To lose your invincibility, let's say, by losing the O so quickly and not getting a chance to show, How hard is that? How hard is that for you, the man, the next morning?
It was pretty tough for me. It was pretty tough. I was real upset. I was upset with myself. Getting hit by something real minor, making a minor mistake and, getting caught clean like that. I feel like I got the most skilled in the 154-pound division. It's just time for me to, rebuild and prove to the world that I am the best in the 154-pound division. It is hammer time.
Excellent job, Brian, as you had a talk with Erickson Hammer Lubin, who is looking to once again climb up the rankings at 154 pounds. But, Steve, yesterday the tempers boiled over at the weigh-in between the former world champion Ishe Smith and Erickson Lubin. You were in the middle of that. What did you take away from the jaw-jacking?
The first thing I took away was I'm glad I escaped without getting hurt because I'm too old to mix with these guys. I stuck the microphone in there and I was doing one of these things. But there's a lot of emotion here. Ishe Smith has seen this type of fight so many times in his career. He's 40 years old. He's been fighting young studs for 15, 17 years. Sometimes he even beats them. Let's not forget, Ishe Smith is one fight removed from a split decision loss to Tony Harrison, who is a world champion now. So Erickson Lubin can't take Ishe Smith light.
And Steve, or Brian, when it comes to Ishe Smith, typically when fighters get to the age of 40, if not beyond, in the words of Boyz II Men, it could be the end of the road. But Ishe Smith is proving that that is incorrect.
Well, Ishe Smith's a very stubborn fighter in a good way, trying to prove that life begins at 40, and you got to give him credit for this one thing. The second half of his career, he has transformed into a much more exciting fighter, a fighter maybe out of necessity who brings the action. And look, we're going to call him a gatekeeper. People don't like that word. He's sort of a celebrity gatekeeper at 154 because if you're going to be somebody in this division, you're going to have to go through Ishe Smith. He's given losses to guys like Franco Larson the first time. I thought maybe he beat J-Rock Williams. He's a tough out in there. It's because he brings that action forward. Very gritty veteran.
Well, and also Ishe Smith is almost like a chameleon in the sense that, as you mentioned, Brian, in this second half of his career, his last few fights, he's shown a propensity to want to mix it up. But also, he has a high boxing IQ, so he could theoretically throw Erickson Lubin off and play mental games with him inside the ring tonight.
Because one thing he really has is toughness. I said the word stubborn before. Ishe Smith might have 10 losses, but he's never been stopped before. He's going to test you. He's going to drag you into that deep end of the pool. Still has some craft, some wily tricks to be able to counter you. Throws a lot of lead right hands to surprise you. He'll make you mix it up. He's an emotional guy, as we established. This is no walk in the park for Erickson Lubin.
Well, being an emotional guy is what Ishe Smith prides himself on, but also being emotional is Erickson Lubin. Let's take a look back at that devastating first-round knockout loss at the hands of then world champion Jermell Charlo. As we go ahead and we see that, Steve, for Jermell Charlo, for Erickson Lubin, can he go ahead and finally rebound and be able, if he can become the first guy to stop Ishe Smith, I think that speaks volumes.
That would be a huge step. You never know, again, how a fighter is going to take a first-round knockout loss. In some ways, you can make the argument, Ray, that it's better to get knocked out in the first round than to take 10 rounds of a beating, which shows that you don't have it. He can, in his mind at least, claim, well, it was one punch, it was a lucky punch, whatever. He has to do that because a fighter at the top level has to go in the ring thinking he's invincible. And sometimes it takes a few wins after a loss to get that feeling back.
Well, and also this is his first fight with Kevin Cunningham, and Lubin has this sense of bravado. I've seen him. He's been a pro for over 5 years. He turned pro at 18 years of age. He was one of those guys that was prospect of the year, and now people are writing him off. And we talked to him a few weeks ago in Las Vegas. He didn't take too kindly to that either, Steve.
Well, to put in perspective a little bit about Erickson Lubin, when Mike Tyson signed him to a promotional deal when Lubin was still a teenager, there was an official from the amateurs, the U.S. amateurs, that said he was very upset with it because he said Erickson Lubin is the best amateur in this country for the past 40 years.
Wow.
So that's what he was thought of, and he did nothing wrong until that Charlo fight, and that Charlo fight was obviously a big ask of both guys because it wouldn't have shocked anybody had Lubin won that fight. So he's rebuilding, yes, but he's young enough to do it.
And I'm impressed by the maturity, sorry to cut you off there, of not replacing his team, but adding a guy like Kevin Cunningham to the team. A no-nonsense guy who has history with some softpaws. Corey Spinks, Devin Alexander, anyone? A guy who's going to just not change him, and that's what Lubin said coming in. Not going to change me. Just going to add a few little wrinkles. I like to see that in a fighter.
Well, speaking of changing around trainers, the man in our main event, Gervonta Tank Davis, who puts his super featherweight crown on the line against Hugo Ruiz. That'll be Showtime Championship Boxing, 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific time. You are watching Countdown Live. We're here in Southern California. But Gervonta Davis was with Kevin Cunningham and then decided to reunite with Calvin Ford. I think he's better off because of that. He said that he's happy to be back in Baltimore. For Gervonta Davis, Brian, what are you expecting tonight? It's his first time headlining, his first time being the sole attraction. What are you expecting to see?
I'm expecting a show because I think it's up to Gervonta to provide that show. When you're out there saying, I am the next great pay-per-view star in the entire sport, you got to stand up and deliver. What he hasn't delivered over the last 18 months was activity. Only 3 rounds. Yes, looked great dispatching Jesus Cuellar to win back that title, of course, that he lost on the scales back at Mayweather-McGregor. It's up to Gervonta Davis now to have the most important year, if you will, of his career up to this point. Wants to fight 3 times, needs to be active, needs to put those punches together and show us. We've seen the flashes of brilliance. Now we got to see the full package delivered.
And Steve, for Gervonta Davis, it almost seems like he's being mentored by Floyd Mayweather in terms of everything that they're doing is so calculated now. And how much of a benefit do you think that having Floyd in your ear telling him how to deal with the lights at this level? Because this is a very big step for Gervonta Davis tonight.
Well, it's great to listen to Floyd if you listen to Floyd. Obviously, who is going to tell you better what it's like to be at that level? But, you know, Floyd Mayweather, in some good ways and in some negative ways, I think, has been very influential on an entire generation of fighters, not just Gervonta Davis. And the fact that Floyd makes such a big deal out of fighting for money, that's great because no one outworks Floyd. He's so smart. He's so talented. But if that's the motivation for Gervonta Davis or any other fighter like him, that's not necessarily the best way to think when you're a young fighter.
Well, it looks like from Gervonta Davis's standpoint that he wants to be that crossover star. Leonard Ellerby, one of the promoters from Mayweather Promotions, has stated that the Grammys are in town tomorrow. They're going to be celebrities here, that Gervonta Davis is starting to branch off into the mainstream. If he can be that guy, he's still in his early 20s, he can pretty much write his own ticket.
Well, first he's got to decide what weight class he's fighting in, okay? He's in 130. He was a couple of ounces over the weight yesterday, struggled a little bit to make weight. So I don't know how much longer we're going to see him at 130 as opposed to lightweight. That's number one. 2 is he's got to get busier. Brian made reference to it. You know, we're in an era today where fighters don't fight that often, at least compared to the way they used to fight. Gervonta Davis needs to be busy. And, you know, Ray, he has 19 knockouts and 20 wins. What fighter has a knockout percentage outside of maybe Wilder and Joshua? Who has a knockout percentage in the lighter weights like that? That's a big plus in his favor.
And Steve, talking about activity level, Hugo Ruiz has been the complete antithesis of Gervonta Davis. He's been very active. He was scheduled to fight Jack Tapora on the opening pay-per-view fight on Pacquiao and Broner, but then they had a late replacement, Alberto Guevara, wins that fight. 3 weeks later, now he's center stage against Gervonta Davis. Ruiz has been fighting consistently, and he believes that him being sharp is going to be a big factor tonight.
I think it will be a big factor. He's confident. He's been in camp a long time, had been preparing for a southpaw, like you mentioned, ahead of time before fights got changed around. And one thing to consider, yeah, he's moving up in weight, essentially moving up in 2 weights when you consider his best work previously had come at 122. But Ruiz has a large body. He's long. He's going to have a 4-inch height advantage against Davis in the ring. I saw him on the scale on Friday. Look muscular, look good, a nice six-pack there going. Looks like he can fill out that weight nicely. We're going to find out in the ring. Not a guy I worry about, though, being over his head at 130.
Well, Ruiz is Mexican, and right now in the ring we have 2 Mexican fighters that are getting set to open up Countdown Live as we have Juan Heraldez, who's undefeated going head-to-head against Eddie Ramirez. And being here in Southern California, there is something special about this venue, Dignity House Sports Bar, formerly the StubHub Center, as our opening contest getting set to get underway. Juan Heraldez and Eddie Ramirez. Let's send it down to the ring to our ring announcer. Here's Miguel Flores.
Dignity Health Sports Park here in Carson, California. We are live streaming with Showtime Championship Boxing's Countdown, presented by Premier Boxing Champions, and brought to you by Mayweather Promotions, TGB Promotions, and Samson Boxing, sponsored by MGM Resorts. This bout will be 10 rounds in the super lightweight division. Our judges ringside are Fernando Villarreal, Daniel Sandoval, and Chris McGlory. Our referee in charge of the action is Ray Corona. Introducing first in the red corner, wearing the black with orange trim. He weighed in at 141 3/4 pounds with 17 victories, including 11 by knockout, opposite of just 2 defeats. Out of Aurora, Illinois, please welcome Eddie El Escorpion Ramirez. And his opponent across the way in the blue corner, wearing the white trunks. He weighed in at 141 3/4 pounds. His record undefeated, 15 victories, including 9 by knockout. Out of Las Vegas, Nevada, please welcome Juan Guillermo Heraldez.
Let's go, 2 seconds. Take the shirt off. All right, this is good.
So
here,
Eddie Ramirez, Juan Heraldez getting set to begin the evening here in Southern California. Ray Flores alongside the Hall of Famers Steve Farhard and Brian Campbell as they prepare, and Juan Heraldez is undefeated, trying to make some moves at 140 pounds. Taking on Ramirez, who when he stepped up in competition hasn't fared too well, coming off a loss at the hands of Argenis Mendez. As you see, the nice jab by Heraldez. Heraldez said he became fascinated with boxing while watching fights with his father and witnessing Julio Cesar Chavez Sr.
Well, the division right now, 140 pounds, definitely going through a season of change. There's an opportunity out there to make a name for yourself without question.
Well, there are a lot of young, up-and-coming, hungry combatants. And Juan Heraldez is trying to go ahead and stamp his name into that upper echelon, Steve.
Well, he's promoted by Floyd Mayweather, and that means there will be opportunities for him, no doubt about that. It's interesting. This is a very interesting matchup because Eddie Ramirez, 2 fights ago, was where Heraldez is now. He was undefeated. Ray, you've called many of his fights.
Yes.
And he's lost. When he stepped up, he lost twice. So his career is really on the line here as a prospect, where Heraldez is just beginning to make a name for himself.
Well, what a moment for Eddie Ramirez was when he was stopped in the first round about 18 months ago here at this venue by Antonio DeMarco. He was the budding prospect and then got hammered and was unable to continue. The referee waved it off in the first round. Ramirez felt it was a quick stoppage. Still, whatever the case may be, that's what happened. And then losing to Mendez, now he's trying to play spoiler against Heraldez.
And you see the styles of the fighters apparent even this early in the first round. Heraldez does not like to fight inside. He's an outside fighter. Ramirez knows that he has to apply pressure. What Ramirez does better than anything else, Ray, is work the body. And he's obviously going to have to be close to do that.
One thing interesting for Heraldez, we know he wants to come in here and box, but guys,
nice right hand by Ramirez.
This is the West Coast capital of wars. You know, many boxers have come in here in this arena, this culture, this feeling has wrecked your best laid plans. You may not be looking for a war, you might walk into one though.
Erickson Lara, anybody against Angulo?
Exactly.
Right?
I mean, we have had so many unbelievable moments here. I mean, this is Showtime Championship Boxing. Hasn't been here in almost 3 years, so great to be back here, as I like to call them, the war grounds. And Brian, this is your first journey. It's almost like having a pilgrimage that you have finally made, sir.
It really is. I call it the House of Box, the hallowed grounds. This is an arena. Look.
Oh, and down goes Ramirez, but that was a slip ruled by referee Ray Corona.
Shoulder butt there, I think.
Lucky to grow up near Madison Square Garden, and the feeling you get in that building for any circumstance makes it feel special. This is a different atmosphere being outdoors, but you can get that electricity right when you walk in.
No question. You can also, I'm sure, you get electricity from the heaters that are on because it's a little cold out here, Brian.
I think I brought that East Coast weather with me, Ray.
No doubt about it. Ray Flores, Steve Farhard, Brian Campbell, round 1. Juan Heraldez against Eddie Ramirez, and round 1 has come to a close. StubHub Center here in Carson, California. Not StubHub Center, Dignity Health Sports Park. I apologize. They just changed the name a few weeks ago. But here in SoCal for our prelims countdown live, coming up, Showtime Championship Boxing comes your way 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific time. The main event, Gervonta Tank Davis puts his super featherweight crown on the line against Hugo Ruiz. Also in action, Mario Barrios Richard and some more. Also, Sharif Bogare goes head-to-head against Xavier Fortuna.
Now, Steve, you're a Hall of Famer. You've done and seen it all. This is the first time you've heard the words dignity and boxing in the same sentence?
Did you say dignity and boxing? No, you must have used the wrong word there, Brian.
This twisted, cruel sport that we love, of course.
Oh, it's beautiful action, as I like to say. And round number 2, nice right hand to start off by Heraldez. Heraldez's most impressive win came on the undercard of the Mayweather-McGregor gigantic pay-per-view extravaganza. That was when he beat Jose Miguel Borrego, and that was an impressive performance out of Heraldez to be able to beat Borrego, who is mowing people down. And at that point, Heraldez gave him a boxing lesson.
Yeah, I think, Ray, in that fight, Borrego was the A side of the matchup. And I was a little bit of a surprise that Heraldez won.
Heraldez is just a technically sound fighter, as you can see, Steve. I mean, he kind of has a little bit of a Floyd Mayweather shoulder roll, which is not emblematic of fighters of Mexican descent, but he can mix it up at times as well.
And I spoke to Jesse Vargas, the former 2-division world champion who sparred a ton with Heraldez, and I asked for a little scouting report. He said, good counterpuncher, doesn't like to fight on the inside. Decent power, high ring IQ, but susceptible to pressure. And that's what Eddie Ramirez has to apply tonight if he's going to have a chance to pull off a minor upset.
Ramirez very active in the trenches early. You see they clinch. They're sneaking in that short little left hand.
Also with Heraldez, he's had some hand injuries over the past few years as well. He had a layoff of about 10 months after the fight against Borrego, and that was because of a hand injury that he sustained. He actually said that he went into the fight with Borrego with that hand injury, and they went ahead and got that rectified, and he is now totally 100% healthy. Heraldez, nice right hand, but Ramirez answers back.
Look, Ramirez has been the aggressor this round, really trying to get behind that jab to set up that overhand right.
Eddie Ramirez trained under the guidance of George Hernandez, esteemed trainer out of Chicago, and Hernandez trains old school way. Not a big gym, small, but his guys get in quite a bit of sparring. Ramirez actually goes 45 minutes each way to that area in Chicago on the west side to get in the sparring. Double jab by Ramirez. We're starting to see more boxing out of Ramirez instead of him mixing it up as much.
Interesting to see early on when, you sort of look at this as that classic boxer versus puncher sort of matchup here. When you can control from distance, it all begins and ends with that jab.
Steve, do you think that Heraldez needs to pick up the pace a little bit? Because at least in the second round, he seems to be getting out-hustled.
Yeah, I think that a slower pace actually favors him if he can control it and win the rounds doing it, because he's fighting a pressure fighter, and the pressure fighter wants to be in your grill all the time and set the fast pace. So I think the slow pace is for Heraldez. But this round, I think he got outworked.
And that's round 2 as it comes to a close.
Good round. You heard him with that fucking hook. Take some deep breaths. Now listen, keep moving to your right. That hook is working because it's a sucker for it. But you gotta set that hook up. If you can set that hook up, it's gonna work. You already caught him and you saw the reaction when you caught him with that fucking hook. When you catch him with that hook, come back with that straight right hand.
Hearing the instructions of George Hernandez, who is the lead trainer, and just saw Gervonta Tank Davis. And guys, I've been hearing reports that Gervonta Tank Davis has a special entrance tonight, and I'm pretty excited about it.
I don't know what it is, but I know that it is special. I heard the same thing, right?
So we will see. And with the Grammys being here in the Southern California area, who knows what we're going to get, Brian. Some theatrics out of the man known as Tank.
He always delivers in that regard. He may have been booed for the missing weight in the Mayweather-McGregor showcase opportunity, the co-main event, and the way he fought early. But he came out with that puffy blue headdress. If you remember, got some Smurf memes online, but...
And speaking of ring entrances, Sharif Bogaré, we're used to him coming out in a lion, wearing a lion over his head and coming into the ring in a cage. Now, I understand they lost the lion's head. So I don't want to break your heart.
Oh,
but
come on.
I know. Maybe they could find another one in time. I don't know.
Steve, not just any lion, a lion that had killed a few people, as the rumor goes.
It's a great story.
Bogaré, originally from Uganda, now he actually moved to the United States in 2007, so he's been here for almost 12 years. He's been in some matchups, but hasn't been at and fighting upper echelon competition, but now gets his opportunity against Xavier Fortuna tonight, Steve.
Yeah, and the winner of this fight very well could get a title fight. So even though Bogaré hasn't faced the toughest opposition for the past 6 years, it only takes one fight. You're only in boxing, you're only as good as your last fight.
Well, Erickson Lubin is trying to shake that stigma from Jermell Charlo. We'll see if he can do that tonight against Ishe Smith. That is coming up following this matchup against Juan Heraldez, Eddie Ramirez. But we are in round number 3. Ray Flores, Steve Farhood, Brian Campbell here at Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson. Ramirez still pressuring, but now it is Heraldez who's doing a better job, Steve, of adjusting and is boxing more in a counterpuncher role.
Well, he's showing movement, left movement, right. Really, you can judge the effectiveness of both of these fighters very simply. Just look at the distance between them. If there's very little distance and there's a lot of wrestling and some infighting, that's good, obviously, for Eddie Ramirez. If there's distance, it's better for Heraldez.
Ramirez is very active to the body of that last round. You're now seeing a switch. You're seeing Heraldez come out, apply that same type of strategy.
When it is distance in this fight, that is such a key component to this matchup. Heraldez, when he keeps his distance, is doing well and is getting and landing the cleaner, more effective punches. When Ramirez closed the distance, it is better suited for him, and he is more advantageous in scoring.
And how do you stop a pressure fighter? Brian made a reference to it before. You do it with the jab. And that's exactly what Heraldez is trying to do.
And Ramirez is using his jab more, because I've seen both of these guys kind of grow up and blossom. But Ramirez is using his jab more, Brian, in this fight compared to other matchups that we've seen in the past.
Setting up that right hand beautifully. I think he's picking up on the fact that each time he's pumping that jab, Heraldez bending over, but opening up a path to victory for that right hand. He's landed a few of them this round.
Steve, I think Ramirez may have hurt Heraldez with that left hook to the body, because Heraldez took several steps backwards and even had his back on the ropes.
And George Hernandez in the corner repeatedly telling Ramirez he's a sucker for the left hook.
This would be a big win, and that brings the round to a close. You got high drama that is beginning to build here at Dignity Health Sports Park.
Siguen siendo bien agresivos con él. Usa el doble jab y síguelo metiendo para atrás y cabezando y cabezando. Este tipo no sabe lo que hacer contigo ya. Está bien confundido contigo. Ya, no me lo dejes para abajo ni para el carajo. Sigue cogiendo aire. Coge aire, coge aire. Coge aire. Coge aire.
Here in Southern California for Showtime Championship Boxing, we come your way live on Showtime in just over 90 minutes, 92 minutes exact is when we go live with our triple header. But still to come, Erickson Lubin, Ishe Smith, as we begin round number 4 between Juan Heraldez and Eddie Ramirez. Gentlemen, out of the two, who are you most impressed with?
I'm most impressed with Ramirez sticking to the game plan of using the jab. I love Heraldez's movement, his footwork, his speed advantages, but those advantages don't add up to much if you're not throwing enough punches back in return.
Heraldez is just not the type of fighter that you're ever going to watch and go, wow. You know, he's not going to overwhelm you with his skills, with his speed or his power. He's a technician. He's been with Mayweather Promotions for about 5 years, and has sparred with Floyd. It's probably why Floyd signed him. Floyd likes to do that.
Well, he said that he got his first opportunity, Steve, to spar with Floyd prior to the first Marcos Maidana matchup.
Right.
That was in 2014. And speaking of Marcos Maidana, some news that Marcos Maidana may be back inside the ring real soon. We'll touch on that a little bit later, but Heraldez was helping Floyd prepare for Maidana.
Yeah, Maidana may come back as a heavyweight from what I hear.
Or you mentioned the Floyd. Heraldez jumping in with a little check hook, looking like prime Floyd against Ricky Hatton there.
But Ramirez swarms him, throws a right hand. Heraldez with some body work now. I think that would better suit him to try to cut and take away the mobility of Eddie Ramirez.
Nothing flashy here about Ramirez, what he's doing, but it's effective. It's jab, jab, right hand, and he's walking him down.
Right, I think Eddie Ramirez is channeling some of the spirits that are in this iconic venue and getting his warrior mentality. We're starting to see that against Heraldez.
It's inevitable. It's inevitable in a place like this. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it right now, Ray. It's in the air. I can feel it coming in the air tonight.
You sure it's not the chill that we just experienced, Brian?
Could be the carne asada fries before the broadcast.
John Molina, Lucas Matisse.
Oh, my goodness.
So many here. Vasquez Marquez 3.
What a war that was, I mean. Also some memorable moments in guys' careers, I mean.
Provodnikov
and Bradley, I mean. That was epic. I mean, Gennady Golovkin with big moment here as well.
Victor Ortiz, Andre Berto, too. Somebody got hit with a pizza in that one. You never know what's going to happen here at the Dignity Health Sports Park.
But again, doubling up on the jab is Ramirez. Slips a couple of punches at Heraldez. It's back and forth ebb and flow action between the two, but again in this fourth round, Steve, it is Ramirez who is more aggressive and is beating Heraldez to the punch.
He is. I'd just like to see a little more consistency of effort from him in terms of applying the pressure. But I think a good round for him. I agree with you, Ray.
Sometimes the best thing you can do to sway the judges is just be active and be consistent.
You'll win rounds doing that.
And you will win the admiration of fight fans all over the world, wherever you're joining us. Thank you so much. As it is Showtime Championship Boxing Countdown Live. Round 4 in the books.
El jab estamos bien. Vamos siguiendo con el jab. No se te olvide el jab. No me abandonen el jab, ¿ok? Just keep working. You've been, this is 6 rounds.
Round 5.
Round number 5 getting set to commence. Still to come here on Countdown Live.
Let's go.
Erickson Lubin and Ishe Smith, the matchup at 154 pounds, but we are here at 140 with Eddie Ramirez and Juan and Heraldez. Oh, big right hand, down goes Ramirez.
4, 5.
Right on the button, counter right hand to the chin there.
Well, there's that game changer.
That came out of nowhere, guys.
And Heraldez sat back, waited, and then lowered the boom. Can Ramirez recover? But he gets clapped again with the right hand, and the second knockdown for Heraldez.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Good.
Shades of that Antonio DeMarco loss. Again, Heraldez picking up the pace here in this 5th round.
And when you're hurt, 2 things to do. Hold or move. Ramirez doing neither.
He needs to hold. Ray Corona watching Ramirez. He's not going to give him a long leash. Big right hands. And now Ramirez finally tries to tie up. Can Heraldez close the show and finish off Ramirez? Funny right hand by Heraldez.
Stop. Take a step back, both of you. No.
And to make matters worse for Eddie Ramirez, he got dropped very early in the round. That much longer for him to go to survive this 5th round.
But Ramirez comes back with a right hand. That stopped Heraldez in his tracks.
Where is this fight, guys? What arena?
It's the War Grounds, gentlemen. Dignity Health Sports Park.
The hallowed grounds. Look at it. Ramirez may have his legs back from those 2 knockdowns. You saw him dig in with that right hand.
They are in the center of the ring trading. You have to love this.
Could become a matter of load watch here for Heraldez. Did he punch himself out there going for the win?
Big left hook by Ramirez, and Ramirez stepping to Heraldez as Heraldez has put Ramirez on the deck twice in this 5th round.
Looks like Ray Corona warning him for holding, I believe, huh?
Now Ramirez goes back on the offensive. This is a big round for Heraldez, providing that he doesn't go down.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes as a boxer, you have to be a mathematician. And Heraldez has this round 10-7. As long as nothing crazy happens to him, he should just be killing time and putting that 10-7 round in his pocket.
Well, instead, he's in the center of the ring and he's eating and absorbing quite a bit of punches. He is eating punches for breakfast, is Juan Heraldez.
Here comes Ramirez going downstairs to the body, trying to set him up for those right hands over the top.
A left hook to the body by Ramirez. Ramirez with beautiful body work.
This is some comeback. What chance would you have given Ramirez to do this about a minute and a half ago?
A 0.0.
Yeah, exactly.
A left hook to the body by Ramirez. As he has recovered nicely. That ends what was an entertaining round 5.
You're doing good. Just keep on his ass now, because them two knockdowns, we need to get them. That's only, we gotta get those 2 points back. Oh, you know, because you got dropped twice. So you close up the gap.
Steve, when you look at a round like that, Ramirez down twice, but after getting up, he had the much better moments as he win back a point. Is this a 10-8 round suddenly instead of 10-7? Oh, that's what I'm talking about. That's why he's a Hall of Famer.
10-8. I called it 10-8. I think Ramirez did enough in that last minute and a half to at least gain 1 point back.
That would be, that's a big moment for Ramirez. And now they begin round number 6 here in Carson, California, Dignity Health Sports Park. A venue that has been home to some momentous occasions and classic battles in boxing. And we are getting some of that here in round 5 as we endeavor into round 6.
And who knows what's going to happen in the second half of this fight, because that 5th round just spun the fight on its heels.
Hope you're not referencing a fan man dropping, all right? You're talking about inside, just inside the ring, right?
Once is enough for that.
Yeah, we are okay on that. We don't need any theatrics regarding that, with the exception of a Gervonta Davis walkout that I'm excited about seeing in our main event against Hugo Ruiz.
I do like the poise from Heraldez. Going back to basics here, distance, jabbing to the body, seems to showing you some maturity there, not overwhelmed by the moment of that Ramirez comeback.
You know, guys, even though Ramirez has lost his last 2, I still see this fight as a minor step up for Heraldez. Yes, he won against Borrego on the Mayweather-McGregor card, as you made reference to, Ray, but I think this is the toughest opponent he's had to date. And again, he's been with Mayweather now about 5 years, so the time for this guy to move is now.
When for Heraldez, when he fought Borrego was just so raw. I mean, very talented, but so raw. He was wiping guys out, had that knockout flavor to him, but he was very raw. Ramirez is the most complete fighter, Steve, as you pointed out, that Heraldez has ever fought. Big right hand, snapping the head back on Heraldez.
And after some good body work by Ramirez, too.
Eddie Ramirez continues to fight on his lead foot, and he is continuing to advance forward, Brian.
He is. Look, I'm very impressed with how he was able to reset his legs, his balance from those 2 knockdowns. Certainly showing you the warrior spirit inside of him.
And look, this is why I love Showtime Championship Boxing Countdown Live, because you get stuff like this, fun fights like this, to get you wrapped up for our triple header coming up in an hour and 22 minutes for Showtime Championship Boxing.
And you never know who's to say our 2 fights won't be the best 2 fights of the night.
That's true. That is very possible, because this one has been a battle. And still to come, Erickson Lubin in action as he collides against Ishe Smith, the former world champion. But there's Heraldez. He needs to go back to boxing beautiful. Jabbing, 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 and then setting traps for Ramirez to come forward and land that right hand.
Well, the last time he landed a clean right hand, we saw what happened. So he has that in the back of his mind, that he can hurt Ramirez.
Big right hand again. That snap back the head of Heraldez. Heraldez, he does not want to have his back on the ropes. Another right hand.
Ramirez putting punches together here, Ray.
He's sending missiles down the pipeline is Ramirez with that thudding right hand. Round 6 comes to a close.
Listen, all you gotta do is keep putting the pressure on that bitch and he'll fold. You got him already. You know?
Well, we apologize about the language being used in the corner with George Hernandez.
Should have heard what Brian called me a few minutes ago.
Just keep breaking it down, just push him a little bit and then pop him, you know?
And the theme, though, Steve, is pressure, pressure, pressure. Ramirez trying to snap that 2-fight losing streak. Before that, though, he picked up wins. He beat undefeated. He picked up a win over Eric Bonet, and he defeated undefeated fighters Ryan Carl and Kevin Watson. Ramirez is used to being on both ends of the spectrum, being the guy that's supposed to lose to the undefeated fighter. He beats him, goes ahead, and then he's the undefeated fighter, and then he loses. So he's been in that sort of different stages of his career.
Yeah, all by the age of 26, which is he's been on top. Those 4 wins in a row that he had were all against really good fighters. Fighters far better than anybody Heraldez has beaten. So Ramirez has a lot of history, a lot of positive history if you take away those last 2 losses. So it's hard to determine where he's at, but he's fighting well tonight.
But in the fight, though, Brian, how big could those 2 knockdowns be for Heraldez, and it could come back to haunt Ramirez?
Certainly, from a scoring standpoint, they can be big. If I'm Heraldez, I got to put punches together, though. Clean counter right hand there. No disrespect to Heraldez, but I'm always weary of a guy who comes out in the Mayweather-inspired shoulder roll style if it's not a style that best befits him. We saw just down the road in Ontario, California a few years back, Andre Berto come out in the shoulder roll, and Robert Guerrero left him with 2 badly swollen eyes.
Yes.
Heraldez is showing that, but he's open, though, to that right-hand counter. That could be a big punch that can bring danger late in this fight.
And I know that Heraldez is more of a boxer-puncher, but at the end of the day, Heraldez is of Mexican descent, which I don't know of any Mexican fighter ever that has ever employed the shoulder roll. That's not what they do.
Right.
Heraldez does it, but it's just the complete antithesis of what a Mexican fighter is all about. Not saying it's for better or for worse, but it's just not in their DNA.
Again, it's that influence of Floyd, how he's affected an entire generation of fighters.
Well, it worked for Floyd, but again, there's only one Floyd Mayweather,
yes,
and Heraldez, and no one else is him.
And the thing about the shoulder roll, guys, Floyd has about 63 ways he slips punches. It's not always just the shoulder roll.
With all that said, though, this round, Heraldez finding success with that counter right hand. Very quick and short shot.
Heraldez is settling into a rhythm now, and I think Ramirez, his aggression has lessened to a degree.
Still, I don't mean to harp on it, but Heraldez, you're going to make rounds, you're going to have to throw punches, you're going to have to be busy. I'm going to need to see a little bit more of that jab.
Juan Heraldez, who is unbeaten coming into this matchup, taking on Eddie Ramirez, who's in the midst of a 2-fight losing streak, trying to snap that tonight against the 28-year-old in Juan Heraldez. Going down it goes Ramirez for a 3rd time in the fight. And Ramirez looks to be hurt. Oh, he is in bad shape, guys. This one is over. And Juan Heraldez stops Eddie Ramirez. 3 straight losses for Ramirez. Heraldez remains undefeated.
Wow. Very sudden again. Just when it seemed like, I know Heraldez had a good 6th round, but just when it seemed like Ramirez was back in the fight, coming back from those 2 knockdowns in the 5th, there he goes, just like that.
And credit to Heraldez for not panicking whatsoever. He knew he had those 2 knockdowns. He believed in his power, and he went out, he executed the game plan, and it served him well.
He not only believed in his power, he believed in that one specific shot, that short counter right hand. It was starting to wear Ramirez down this round. Maybe I wanted him to throw more shots, but he had a plan. He wanted to line that up, and as we saw when it came to those 3 knockdowns, when he lands clean, things happen.
Well, that's why they are professional fighters, and that's why they are professional trainers, and I am not, because I was harping on Heraldez for using the shoulder roll, not being so aggressive. It may have confused him, but in the end, it served him well. He waited for his moment, he got it, and he took advantage of the opportunity.
Huge win to put it in perspective for Heraldez. Now, you know, the 140-pound division, there's a tournament going on. There are a lot of good young fighters. He's in the mix, clearly, and as I said before, because he's promoted by Floyd Mayweather, he will get his share of opportunities. But the other side of that coin, Eddie Ramirez now 3 straight losses, 2 by stoppage. This was a very promising prospect out of Chicago not long ago. no longer.
No question about it. He was looking good in the fight. I don't know. I'm very curious to see how the scorecards had it at the time of the stoppage. But Heraldez remains undefeated. For Ramirez, that's 3 straight losses, but a very big win for Juan Heraldez, who now has quite a bit of momentum as we continue in 2019, as Heraldez shakes hands with Ramirez, showing a sign of respect as we get set to throw it down to the ring for the official particulars. And our ring announcer, man, I know quite well, my brother, Miguel Flores.
Ladies and gentlemen, the end comes at 2 minutes and 30 seconds into round number 7. For your winner, by knockout and still undefeated, Juan Heraldez.
So Juan Heraldez picks up the W with a 7th round stoppage over Eddie Ramirez. You are watching Showtime Championship Boxing Countdown Live as we get set to go live coming up in an hour and 15 minutes from right here in Southern California. The triple header on tap, highlighted by Gervonta Tank Davis putting his super featherweight crown on the line against Hugo Ruiz. If you don't have Showtime, I don't know why you don't have Showtime, but go to getshowtime.com to start your free trial now. Gentlemen, we talked about Heraldez. He went ahead and looked impressive, and this is quite a bit of momentum, and now we'll see who he gets next, Steve.
Well, the reason I'm impressed with Heraldez, you judge a boxing announcer by how he handles adversity. When your microphone doesn't work, when your earpiece doesn't fit. It's no different with boxers. How do you judge a fighter? He faced some adversity in this fight. I think he lost some of the early rounds, and then after dropping Ramirez twice, he got pounded in the second half of that 5th round. So it's not just that he won, it's how he won, and I was impressed with him because of that.
And getting to Steve's point, Brian, Heraldez proved that he could get buzzed and recover well and still stick to the game plan, even though you should have, or the mindset might be, let me go ahead and test this guy. Let me go mano a mano. Heraldez said, I'm okay on that. I'm going to wait for my moment. He had the 2 knockdowns early in the fight, and then in the 7th, lowered the boom and finished it off.
I think he showed us a lot in the end of that 5th round after scoring those 2 knockdowns, when suddenly his adversity level raised when Ramirez came back. Ramirez was fighting a little bit of desperation, trying to avoid that 3rd straight loss. Showed us a lot of heart, but if you're Heraldez, you righted the ship, you stayed poised, may have, almost punched himself out during that sequence, came back strong that next round, looking to throw punches, looking to move. Very impressed by this performance.
Well, and speaking of performances, coming up, our main event here on Countdown Live, Erickson Lubin takes on the former world champion in Ishe Smith. Erickson Lubin trying to make a definitive statement tonight. He is now with Kevin Cunningham as his lead trainer, and he feels that he's stronger than ever, he's better than ever, and he wants to put that knockout loss at the hands of Jermell Charlo in the distant past and go ahead and finally go after a world title, which Steve, he believes is in his imminent future.
Well, he has a big step to take tonight, and we're going to measure Erickson Lubin where he's at, not just by winning or losing, but how he wins and loses, because Ishe Smith usually, even in a losing effort, gives a great effort. So can he dominate Ishe Smith? Stop him, that's asking a lot, even of a 40-year-old Ishe Smith. But can he win almost every round and box his way cleanly to a win? I think that's what he needs to do.
And for Ishe Smith, Brian, this is a big moment for him to once again get a fight against a young, hungry contender. If Ishe Smith can get a win over Erickson Lubin, then who knows what possibilities that opens up for him.
This would be a giant victory for him. We talked about this 154 division is red hot right now. Ishe Smith has pushed a lot of these young guys to the distance before, really dragging them into the deep end of the water. Victory over Erickson Lubin, you're right back into that title mix. We've seen Ishe Smith win a title. We've seen him compete for one a couple of times. Always tough, always going to give you that gutsy, stubborn effort. Hey, I'm looking forward to see what kind of traps he can set against Erickson Lubin, how he can just mix things up and make it not an easy night. If Lubin's going to impress me, it's going to be how he puts his punches together. Can he be the aggressor? Can he dictate the pace? All the things you want to see a young fighter do.
And Ray, I think one of the most important things you can do when you fight a 40-year-old fighter, you have to remind him early in the fight that he's 40 years old. How do you do that? By setting a fast pace. And Lubin needs to do that.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what, gentlemen? I am not a weatherman whatsoever. I'm not a meteorologist, but I will tell you that it has gotten considerably colder since we went on the air about 45 minutes ago. Steve, do you think that with it being colder, we're outdoors, how much does that play into the fighters when it comes to warming up, staying warm, trying to avoid injury, their game plan? What does that do to their psyche?
Well, I just did a SHOWbox show in Rochester, so this is very warm. Rochester was 2 degrees when I woke up on fight morning, so this isn't so bad. But yes, being that this is an outdoor fight, Ray, very important to obviously warm up a lot in your dressing room. And when you come out, you want to be already sweating. If you're Ishe Smith, being a 40-year-old fighter, I think it's even more important to be warmed up faster because it usually takes an older fighter a little longer to get the engine moving.
So it got up to a high of 60 degrees here in Southern California, supposed to drop to potentially 49 degrees. It is considerably colder inside here at Dignity Health Sports Park. So, Brian, it's going to be very interesting to see how the fighters, if they have any issues as nightfall has went ahead and descended upon Southern California in terms of getting into their rhythm quickly. How are they able to handle if they're able to stay warm or not?
Well, there's a couple competing factors into that point of how is this fight going to start? Is it going to be more of a tactical situation, a little chess match, or are we going to get right in each other's grill? Because this is Dignity Health Sports Park, Carson, California, where things like that happen. This is a very good matchup. It's also a very heated matchup, as we established early on. These two do not like each other. If I'm Ishe Smith, am I going to be the wily veteran that tries to lure the young kid into a little bit of a brawl, slip some punches, get him in there? Or is that the type of strategy that can get Ishe Smith his first stoppage loss? It'll be interesting to see who tries to set the pace early, who tries to set the tone, and if some of that emotions, those feelings, start to play out inside the ring.
Well, Valentine's Day is a couple of days away. We're about, 5 days away from Valentine's Day, so I don't know about feelings, but when it comes to Erickson Lubin, he has a feeling that he's going to be the first guy to stop Ishe Smith. And again, Steve, no one has been able to do that. Ishe Smith has fought everybody. So if you go ahead and see Erickson Lubin go out and get that stoppage, talk about a moment.
I think it would be huge, and I don't care how old Ishe Smith is. He's proven in recent fights how tough he is and how he's still sturdy and dangerous against young fighters. And, you look at Ishe Smith's career. First of all, he's one of my favorites personally, so I have to recuse myself from commenting on him at times. But this is a fighter who fought on SHOWbox 15, 20 years ago, won some that he shouldn't have won, lost some that he should have won. He went bankrupt, considered suicide. Fought on the Contender, the original Contender. He was the bad guy wearing the black hat. And then he won a world title late in his career, and you talked about how emotional he was. So he's had an amazing career, and there's nothing Erickson Lubin can give him that he hasn't seen already.
Erickson Lubin, Ishe Smith, they are in the ring. Let's send it down to our ring announcer. Here's Miguel Flores.
Ladies and gentlemen, the action continues from the Dignity Health Sports Park with 10 rounds in the super welterweight division. Presented by Premier Boxing Champions and brought to you by Mayweather Promotions in association with TGB Promotions. Sponsored by MGM Resorts. Our judges ringside are Carla Cais, Daniel Sandoval, and Alejandro Rochin. The referee in charge of the action is Jack Reese. Introducing first in the red corner, wearing the black and silver trunks. He weighed in at 155 3/4 pounds with 29 victories, including 12 by knockout. Opposite of just 10 defeats out of Las Vegas, Nevada, the former IBF Super Welterweight Champion, Ishe Sugar Shay Smith. And his opponent across the ring in the blue corner, he weighs in at 155 3/4 pounds with 19 victories, including 14 by way of KO, opposite of just 1 defeat. From Orlando, Florida, the former world title challenger, Erickson Hammer Lubin.
Get that shirt off, baby. Get that shirt off.
Erickson Lubin, Ishe Smith. A matchup in the super welterweight division. Jack Reese, referee in charge.
All right, guys, your trunks both look good. I gave you both instructions. Just want to remind you, please listen and follow my commands at all times. Protect yourself at all times. Good luck.
Erickson Lubin
Nobody's counting nothing?
and Ishe Smith getting set to tango here in Southern California. We are outdoors at Dignity Health Sports Park. We go live in just over an hour on Showtime Championship Boxing, but this is our main event on Countdown Live. Ray Flores alongside the Hall of Famers Steve Farhood and Brian Campbell. Erickson Lubin is a southpaw, conventional for Ishe Smith.
One thing we know is if any of the theatrics from Friday were going to carry over into this fight, Jack Reese is the wrong referee for that. Very strict, very get off my lawn if he doesn't like what you're doing in there.
Well, I think Jack Reese is one of the best referees in the sport. Did a wonderful job in Wilder Fury that you saw on Showtime pay-per-view back on December 1.
Indeed so. I would rate him at the highest level of referees.
We don't have that wild Undertaker Tyson Fury moment if he isn't a calm, poised referee in round 12.
And do not forget, Gervonta Davis puts a super featherweight crown on the line against Hugo Ruiz. A triple header on tap here tonight from Southern California. Erickson Lubin, he's a southpaw. By trade, he's a right-hander, but he's fought as a southpaw for such a long time. His ambidextrous is how I would like to classify him as, Steve.
And Ishe, for his part, 2 of his last 6 fights have been against lefties, including his fight with Arizona Lara. And once you fought Lara as a lefty, nobody else is going to give you that much problem by being a lefty.
Very patient start here. Really, Ishe just taking a few snapshots, not looking to throw much. Lubin using the jab, pawing at times, mixing in a stiff one now and then, but really feeling each other out early.
What's emblematic of the filling out process that Ishe Smith has become so accustomed to doing and being the veteran that he is. Just to show you the disparity in age, they are 17 years apart, but Ishe Smith made his pro debut when Erickson Lubin was in preschool.
Well, he's nicknamed the Hammer, but he was born in 1995, well past the point where MC Hammer was anything to speak about.
And that you can't touch.
Ooh. Did you guys work on that in the rehearsal? I didn't hear that.
No, something we just came up with. And we'll see what Erickson Lubin can come up with to try to get more offense against Ishe Smith.
Well, I think the slow pace so far, you would think would favor the older fighter, but in this case, because there's a pretty good distance between them and Lubin is able to take a couple of steps and box, I think this pace is favoring Lubin.
And I think we're seeing a difference when it comes to the athleticism, the explosiveness out of Erickson Lubin compared to that of Ishe Smith.
Oh, no question about it. And look, for all intents and purposes, Ishe is giving this round away. A very Floyd Mayweather type move to sort of take those snapshots that we're talking about, get a feel of what Lubin has in terms of speed, explosiveness, footwork.
And I don't think there was anything more emblematic of that explosiveness when Lubin fought against Jorge Cota that we saw.
Oh, yeah.
It was a special on CBS that Showtime Championship Boxing did a great job of covering, and he went ahead, he dipped down and whacked Cota with that big straight left that put him out and really gave the night to Erickson Lubin that very evening.
That's the fight that sort of told us Lubin might be special. Still might be special. We'll see.
And round 1 is in the books.
Okay. It's way too long.
He's happy to go jab.
He's happy for one day. Give me that. I'll go to the gym.
Erickson Lubin went ahead and spent time away from his son. His son's actually going to be 2 years old in the next week, but he spent Christmas away from his son. He sent him gifts, but he was so entrenched in training camp, Brian, that Erickson Lubin went to West Palm Beach with Kevin Cunningham and did not leave camp. He was so focused, stayed there through the holidays so he could get the proper work needed to prepare for this moment against Ishe Smith.
Look, I love his maturity levels. It's not just how unflappable he seems in response to that devastating first-round knockout against Jermell Charlo, but it's adding Cunningham, like you mentioned. Also did some work in Las Vegas doing elevation training for the first time. This seems like a fighter who's ready to move on and put that in the rearview mirror.
And for Ishe Smith, he likes to go in and run up the mountains in Mount Charleston in Nevada, an elevation of almost 12,000 feet, Steve.
I think he was he the first native Las Vegan to win a world title? He was.
Defeated, and that was on the undercard of Mayweather Canelo back in 2013.
Hashtag
at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas.
Hashtag all the feels for Ishe Smith in that moment.
And down goes Ishe Smith by Lubin.
There is the power that we talked about from the hammer.
This could be huge. Can Smith get up? Erickson Lubin trying to become the first fighter to stop the former world champion in Ishe Smith. Lubin goes on the offensive.
Well, Steve, now we're going to find out how much 40-year-old Ishe Smith wants to be in there against a young stud.
Smith goes down for a second time. One would think if Smith goes down again, Jack Reese will wave it off. Back on the attack goes Erickson Lubin. Big straight left, and that is a slip or a push down. Ishe Smith needs to tie up here in this moment. Big uppercut by Lubin. Right hooks, down for a third time goes Ishe Smith.
If you're the veteran Ishe, you just need to get out of this round.
Hey, you're off balancing. It's on you if you get hit. Can you continue? Come on, man. You got to bring something to the table here, brother.
Quality instructions by Jack Reese, telling Ishe Smith he needs to see something out of him. Can Smith survive the second round? He's been on the canvas, or 3 knockdowns. Big straight left by Lubin.
Smith's legs don't look like they're back.
Big right hook by Lubin.
He's unable to even set himself and land anything big coming back.
Under 40 seconds remaining here in the second round.
That won't stop the veteran from trying, though. A lot of heart from Ishe.
He's been down before, Smith, twice against Venice Motorosian.
Lubin is in seek and destroy mode. Big uppercut followed by a right hand. Now they tie up.
I mentioned that Venice fight. I think that was the turning point for Ishe in this part of his career. A more action-oriented, step-up, exciting style.
Straight left again. Smith bending over. Can he survive? Moments away. Big straight left backing him up. And round 2 comes to a close, and Smith survives. Wow.
You could score that one 10-6, guys.
Long, long uphill road to climb here for Ishe Smith. Lucky to survive that one.
I need you to keep your hands up and keep pumping double and triple jack.
That's Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, the former light heavyweight champion of the world, in Ishe's corner.
I just want the doctor.
And let's take a look back at, there's that knockdown that was right on the ear.
Yeah, exactly.
It threw off his equilibrium.
Equilibrium shot. Yeah, it was clearly not on the chin. And give Lubin credit for landing a shot that was a little unorthodox. They're coming around the side instead of sending the punch right up the middle. And at this point, Brian made reference to it, Smith's balance is just gone. I don't think he took that many more big punches in the round, but he couldn't keep himself upright.
Hey, credit to Jack Reese. We mentioned that coming in. One of the smartest referees. He'll give a fighter a time. He'll read that situation. Hey, we may not have had a Pacquiao-Marquez legendary rivalry if the great Hall of Famer Joe Cortez didn't allow that fight to go on early in round 1 of the first fight.
Well, Jack Reese certainly becoming one of the top, if not the best referee in the business.
And Jack Reese was taught in high school by my father-in-law, just for the record.
How about that?
Lincoln High School, Coney Island, New York.
Talk about the synergy there. Round 3, this one's scheduled for 10. Ray Forrest, Steve Farhood, the Hall of Famer, and Brian Campbell here at Dignity Health Sports Complex in Carson. A straight left backing up Ishe Smith yet again.
Steve, what's the best way for a veteran like Ishe, who might want to milk the clock here to get his legs back? Punch and hold? What are you looking for here?
Well, punch and hold, I mean, hold period. Yeah, just make the clock go down, because he's not landing any punches. He's in defensive mode, yeah. He's just taking a pounding, and I don't think Eddie Mustafa Muhammad would allow this to get to a point where you might allow it to get to with a younger fighter.
Well, guys, sometimes you see a fighter that he gets old overnight. And tonight, it is the brilliance of Erickson Lubin, but also it could be a case where Ishe Smith has finally hit that moment where his legs and his mind is telling him to do things, but his body is not reacting well and responding.
True. His heart, though, is telling him to stay in it. We made a hammer reference already. Ishe a little too legit to quit right now.
I don't think you have to worry about Ishe Smith quitting whatsoever. But Erickson Lubin certainly going to want him, make him think that way. Just under an hour away from going live. Showtime Championship Boxing, the triple header here, featuring Gervonta Davis as he puts his super featherweight crown on the line against Hugo Ruiz. Also Mario Barrios, the unbeaten 140-pound prospect. He is in action as well against Richard Zamora. Sharif Bogaré and Xavier Fortuna will kick off the action at 135 pounds.
Interesting how patient Lubin is here. Ishe Smith, never a big puncher.
Right.
Lubin certainly had him off equilibrium and wobbling around last round. I would have liked a little bit more pressure to see, hey, can we end this fight right now?
I think it's his way of acknowledging that Ishe Smith is such a veteran and that he's not the kind of guy you can just blow out, you know, anytime you want to.
So this is the best we've seen Erickson Lubin look. To be able to come out here and have your way thus far in the first 3 rounds against Ishe Smith, who is very difficult to look good no matter who he's fighting.
You nailed it right there. That's why it's been impressive. I love the poise. I love the belief in his power. Never reckless. Really setting up his shots for a young fighter at just 23 years old.
Steve and Brian, to piggyback off your point, it looks like Lubin is thinking more, but he is, and down goes Smith again. 4th time in the fight that he's been down. This could be it.
Expect Jack Reese to take a real long look here, fellas.
The body language of Ishe Smith would lead you to believe that the fight is being taken out of him by Erickson Lubin. A big straight left. Lubin goes back on the attack in round 3. Draws to a close. And Jack Reese going to take a long look at Ishe Smith. We see our overhead camera, Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, his lead trainer. And this one is over. Jack Reese has waved it off, and Erickson Lubin has become the first man to stop Ishe Smith. What a moment by Erickson Lubin as he picks up a stoppage victory over the former world champion.
I got 2 words for you, fellas. Statement win. That's how you do it. That's how you bounce back from a first-round KO in the biggest fight of your young career.
Moments, and you look at February 9th, 2019 for Erickson Lubin. This is a moment.
For sure. I mean, how could he have dreamed of this being any better a victory than it was? And what this must do for his confidence, not that he was lacking in confidence to begin with, but this is a tremendous win for him, and Erickson Lubin is back.
Well, aside from Floyd Mayweather, the only other entity that is undefeated is Father Time. And I think that Father Time has finally caught up with the first world champion from Las Vegas, Ishe Smith.
You know, for a guy that's been so durable, we said if he could get stopped for the first time, what a victory this would be for Lubin. And I think for Ishe, maybe it is a turning point when you start to say he was never even in this fight, never really able to establish a game plan. Lubin started to walk him down early with those overhand lefts, and of course, that one clean shot to the ear threw off the equilibrium. Ishe never recovered.
Now let's send it down to the ring to get the official particulars. Here's a ring announcer, Miguel Flores.
Ladies and gentlemen, this contest comes to a close at the end of the 3rd round. For your winner by knockout, Erickson Hammer Lubin.
Well, he has style inside the ring with his attire, and his performance was that. Very stylish as he unloaded and stopped Ishe Smith. That's a very quality performance by Erickson Lubin as we take a look at some of the highlights.
Yeah, just to fast forward to the end of the fight, I'm glad to see they embraced, and a lot of the bad blood that was there yesterday at the weigh-in was not a factor after they fought each other. And there was the left hand that Lubin landed around the side that hit Smith in the ear, and that really set up everything else. That was the one devastating punch that Smith, in essence, never recovered from.
Look, we've seen a shot like that, if you remember, Miguel Cotto, Sergio Martinez won in the round 1. I know Martinez had the bum knee that night, but it was an equilibrium shot. He was never the same after that. And, you know, we talk about the way this fight was stopped. I think Jack Reese saw enough of a pattern where there was no need to come out for a 4th round. I'm all in favor of that stoppage.
Well, and also, I've never seen, and we have witnessed, all of us, all three of us have seen the career of Ishe Smith. I have never seen Ishe Smith not wanting to engage or fight. It just looked like the fight was taken out of him by Erickson Lubin. I've never seen that, and Jack Reese made the appropriate call to wave it off. He didn't even give him an opportunity, and Ishe Smith did not dispute that whatsoever, Brian.
And he certainly gave Ishe, before that, plenty of opportunity to right the ship, get his legs. Was really never able to do, and like we talked about, never able to really get into this fight, whether it was by boxing with the jab or under any circumstance. Lubin was really that good, guys.
Yeah.
Power in both hands, just 23, and the mental poise to come back from the type of loss against Jermell Charlo. Not to harp on it, but that a lot of young fighters would not come back from.
You're watching Showtime Championship Boxing Countdown Live. At the top of the hour, we go live on Showtime with our triple header highlighted by Gervonta Tank Davis as he puts his super featherweight crown on the line against Hugo Ruiz. That is here in Southern California. Ray Flores alongside Brian Campbell and Steve Farhad. If you don't have Showtime, all you have to do to start your free trial, go to getshowtime.com, and I promise you're going to love what you are seeing. 5 straight weeks of boxing here on Showtime. And with Erickson Lubin, Steve, it's almost like there was a point after the loss to Charlo where he was out of the top 10. People started to forget about him. But after a performance like that, guess what? He's back.
He's back. There's no doubt about it. He's 23 years old. Maybe that really worked in his favor in terms of coming back from that first-round knockout loss. The other thing is, you know, in boxing, especially today, because fighters are fighting less than they used to, you're really only as good as your last fight. And now his last fight is this fight. So how are people going to think of Erickson Lubin? He's a 23-year-old kid. He could just be getting started. Instead, now he's knocking on the door of being a contender again.
When he's also a 23-year-old that has already dealt with fighting for a world title. So sometimes in your first opportunity, especially being that young, you don't know how to handle it. Floyd Mayweather talks about this, and he says there are levels to this game. I think Erickson learned a very valuable lesson against Charlo. He took that, applied it, had a little bit of a down year last year, inactivity, but got himself back, got his mind correct, and now he's starting off 2019 with a bang.
And let's flip the coin over. Ishe Smith at 40. I think we've been, as fans and fans of the sport, a little bit spoiled by the performances of some older fighters. Bernard Hopkins, pretty useful into 50. Okay, Manny Pacquiao just scoring a big win at 40. Well, not every 40-year-old is the same. And Ishe Smith has been in so many difficult fights. And this was, in retrospect, of course, but this was a very, very good opponent. Not just a good win for Erickson Lubin, but a very good opponent who had a lot of name value.
Looking forward to seeing what the future has to hold for Erickson Lubin. What do you want to see, Brian?
I was going to pop in and tap you, and I'd say, how about business picking up at 154, which we established coming in? Lubin now reinstating his name in that conversation. We know he lost to Jermell Charlo, but Charlo himself has suffered a defeat since then. The upset to Tony Harrison, the new champion. We may see that rematch. Lubin said before this fight, if I get through this test against Ishe, oh, you better believe I want Jermell again. But let's not forget one thing. Tony Harrison once came into Erickson Lubin's gym before he was the champion. Erickson said he ran his mouth a little bit. They had a sparring session. It got very physical. Lubin was the last man standing. No, we're not supposed to talk about what happens in the gym because it stays in the gym. I want to see it inside of a ring now with this type of backdrop.
Well, Tony Harrison just became a world champion. I know he's a fighting champion. Also, you spoke with Jared Hurd yesterday at the weigh-in that we saw here on the stream as well. So there are a litany of options out there for Erickson Lubin at 154.
And we're going to see Castaño against Lara at 154 in March at Barclays Center. So there are tons of fights, and while Lubin may have to wait for a Charlo rematch with Harrison, certainly I would put him at the front of the line. If it's Harrison, I would love to see a Lubin-Harrison fight. I think that would be fascinating.
Let's talk about what we can expect, though, in our opening contest on Showtime Championship Boxing coming up in less than an hour. You are watching Countdown Live. Ray Flores, the Hall of Famer, Steve Farhad, and Brian Campbell here in Southern California Outdoors Dignity Health Sports Park here in Carson. But we have Sharif Bogaray going head-to-head against Xavier Fortuna. Fortuna, the former world champion. Bogaray has fought for a world title before. Now they're both at a crossroads and both looking to make a definitive statement.
Both really have an opportunity to remind people who they are, specifically for Sharif Bogaray, because it has been so long since he's been in a fight with this much meaning. 6 years since that loss to Rishar Abril. We know he's got, when he uses it, one of the better entrances in all of boxing. When Sharif Bogaray comes in the cage with the lion head, maybe to quote Chris Algieri's old trainer, Tim Lane, it's time to get him out of the cage. Let's get him back into the ring in a fight that matters. You're going to see that tonight. Very tough matchup.
Well, speaking of a tough matchup, Xavier Fortuna is tough stylistically for anyone to deal with, as he fought Robert Easter Jr. last January at Barclays Center, a fight that some people thought that Fortuna should have been given the victory.
Fortuna won that fight. I scored it unofficially for Showtime, and I definitely think that Fortuna deserved the decision. And you see we see some action from Fortuna. I'm going to make a bold prediction. I've been wrong so many times in my career that I don't care if I'm wrong anymore. But here's my bold prediction.
You're a Hall of Famer. You got nothing to lose here, Steve.
Well,
all right,
they could take that Hall of Fame back from. But here's my prediction. Blood will be a factor in this fight.
Blood will be a factor
Blood
in this
will be
one.
a factor.
Wow.
They're both bleeders. They've both been cut a lot. As a matter of fact, Bogaré was in the bloodiest fight we've ever had in our 19 years on Showbox when he fought Ray Beltran a long time ago. So that's my guess. I'm not saying who. I'm saying maybe both.
To add to that equation, Fortuna's a fighter who will flirt at times with the rules, not afraid to let that left hand go, not afraid to let other body parts go when he's throwing punches too. You never know.
Well, he definitely let some other body parts go, and that came against Adrian Granados as he fell out of the ring. That was on the Spence Ocampo undercard that you saw on Showtime Championship Boxing. And talk about a bizarre moment, Steve, where Fortuna just ended up going out of the ring and could not continue.
It was a very strange matchup to begin with because Fortuna was jumping to 140 pounds, a weight class that he had never fought before. And I think they described it as an experiment. I would describe it as a mistake. I don't think he belongs at 140 pounds. So he's back at 135 now. That's where he belongs, and that's probably where he would want to get a title fight at. He talks about maybe even going down to 130. But Granados' pressure was beginning to get to Fortuna in that fight when it had that terrible ending.
So Fortuna no longer at 140, a guy who is at 140 pounds. It's our co-main event. Mario Barrios, who is undefeated, taking on Richard Zamora, who is making his United States debut. Zamora has spent his entire career down in Mexico. And Brian, Mario Barrios is really blossoming. They said he's trained by Virgil Hunter. He's had some quality sparring with Showbox alum Devin Haney, also Amir Khan as well. And those around Mario Barrios believe that he can be the next big thing at 140.
They like him because he's fun. He throws punches and he gets after it. And you know the old idea of iron sharpening iron. Not bad to be in camp with some slicksters like Haney, especially Khan with that hand speed. But the common thread in that is Virgil Hunter, the trainer, the calm, the careless whisperer right in your ear. I think if he can add some wrinkles to what we're already seeing in Barrios, which is a lot of explosion, we got a fighter here.
And one interesting thing I noticed during the fighter meetings, Barrios is marked under one of his eyes. And we said, what happened? Because you usually don't see that with a fighter just about to get into the ring. He said that was from sparring with Amir Khan. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, he's marked. You'll see it when he gets in the ring.
Well, we saw Barrios about 11 months ago as he went ahead. He was down in San Antonio where he lives, where he resides, and he picked up a big win over Yuri Bernardo and really starched Bernardo in the process.
He can punch, and this time he does it with the right hand. But to me, the best punch he has is his left hook to the body. You know, he's a tall guy, exceptionally tall, even for this weight. Yet he has a fighter's instinct because he used to be much smaller. He had a very, very sudden growth spurt when he was about, 15 or so, where he went from like 5'3" to 5'11" in a year. So he learned to fight small, and then all of a sudden he was a tall fighter. He still likes to fight small, and he loves to dig that left hook to the body.
And also, Barrios is one of those guys that I think, Brian, he's starting to fill out and develop his man strength. Now he's starting to approach his mid-20s. When you're early 20s and even late teens, you don't have your man strength. Barrios is starting to get his man strength, and we're seeing it with his recent string of stoppage victories.
And that's only going to be more dangerous for his opponents. And what I really want to see tonight in this platform, this opportunity, this showcase, if you will, getting a co-main event slot in a card this big under Gervonta Davis means something. I want to see the mentality. Is he going to come out there confident? Is he going to come out poised? Is he going to set up his opponent? Or is he going to be too excited to make a statement and come out there throwing bombs right away? Again, to beat the dead horse, this is the right arena to throw bombs, to make things happen in there. Let's see what type of statement he can make against a fighter in Zamora who
we don't know.
Kind of roll the dice. What are we getting?
Unknown quantity. Zamora is this unknown quantity. Steve, as you do a great job researching and gathering facts and information, you haven't been able to find much on Zamora.
I don't think anybody knows much about this guy. You know, we're all spoiled because we use YouTube so much to do our scouting. A few years ago, that wasn't available. But in the case of Zamora with YouTube, there's one fight where he got knocked out in one round. There's another fight where he scored a first-round knockout, and that's all there is. So no one's really seen much of this guy. And in that sense, look, he might be a really good fighter, he might not be. I don't know. We'll find out. But in that sense, he's a little scary because there's a little bit unknown about him.
It reminds me of something. Sorry to cut you off. It reminds me of the great Miguel Cotto, 2005, in the early parts of his welterweight 140 moving up prime, fighting that Ricardo Torres. Who's this guy from Argentina?
Yeah.
He's fought 28 cab drivers. He's knocked him out. Well, he found out that night, Miguel Cotto, in an emotional victory, having to get off the canvas to do that. That's why. Because, we're going to have to find out today where Barrios is mentality-wise, where his backbone is. He may have a tougher test than you realize.
Emotions are running high, especially as we approach Valentine's Day, 5 days away from that. But what is coming up? Let's take a look at what we have on tap for Showtime Championship Boxing. February 23rd, just announced. Steven Espinoza again making magic happen down in London, or out in London, across the pond. James DeGale, Chris Eubank Jr. Also, Joe Joyce takes on Bermain Stavern. March 2nd, Barclays Center. Looking forward to being in Brooklyn for this one. A contest at 154 pounds. Edislandi Lara, Brian Castaño. Also, Ortiz and Hammer, they get it on in the heavyweight division. Nunez and Edner Cherry in action as well. Guys, a loaded schedule when it comes to Showtime Championship Boxing. And tonight, our main event, Gervonta Tank Davis puts his super featherweight crown on the line against Hugo Cuatito Ruiz. And Brian, for Gervonta Davis, finally, his name is on the marquee. Southern California. People coming out just to see him. Can he pass the test and look as impressive and spectacular as he has in recent memory?
The key word for me in this equation is poise, maturity. Got to show you what he has on the inside. On the outside, we've seen the spectacular flashes of brilliance. Nobody punches like this guy at 130. It's a southpaw. Yes, he's quick. He can set up his punches. But it's about maturity, and it's about, look, he just has a baby daughter, making some changes in life. 24 years old, made some mistakes out of the ring during this stretch where in 18 months we've only seen him in 3 rounds. It's time to start fresh and start new. Wants to fight 3 times, wants to be active, wants to be in your living room on a regular basis. Also wants to be in your living room for extra money, pay for play. The pay-per-view future king, as he likes to say. It starts with taking care of a hungry opponent in Ruiz.
Well, originally, it was Davis who was supposed to fight Abner Mares. But Mares sustained an injury in training, actually has a detached retina that he's going to go ahead and have a procedure done on. For Davis, having that kind of caliber opponent, Abner Mares, to now have the late replacement in Hugo Ruiz, Steve, do you think that could be playing a factor mentally on his psyche?
I think it's definitely a possibility, right? And here's why. There was a period a couple years ago where Gervonta Davis was supposed to fight Orlando Salido, and he was going to get paid X amount of money. Well, Salido fell out. He ended up getting a substitute opponent in Francisco Fonseca. He got paid about half the money, and from what Calvin Ford told me, his trainer, he was very disappointed. It showed in the ring. It showed before he even got in the ring because he was overweight and lost his title on the scales. So is that the same problem psychologically that Gervonta Davis has with this substitute? We'll find out in the ring, but it goes back to what Brian is talking about, maturity.
And also with Gervonta Davis, he has a knockout percentage of 95%. Only one guy, just one guy, has gone the distance with Gervonta Davis. That just goes to show you the explosiveness, the power that the young man has.
He's a mini Tyson in a way. I mean, you hate to put that label on anybody because the expectations is obviously so high. But, he's a short fighter. He's dynamic with his speed. And he obviously has the punching power. Now, the difference with him and Tyson is Tyson was a heavyweight once, always, and forever. Gervonta Davis may move up in weight. He's short for his weight class. Will he be a good lightweight? Eventually, he's going to fight at lightweight. He came in a little bit overweight in this fight, and lost the 0.2 pounds. No big deal. But I don't think we're going to see him at 130 for that much longer.
And also, when it comes to height standpoint, you mentioned that Gervonta Davis is short, things along those lines, Steve. A guy who's tall is Hugo Ruiz. Let's talk about that, Brian, as Ruiz taller. Obviously, a different stylistic matchup for Gervonta Davis compared to that of Abner Mares. That could be very advantageous for the man from Los Mochis, Sinaloa.
Absolutely. Look, Los Mochis is an area that produces fun, exciting fighters historically. We said Ruiz is motivated, already been in camp, just had a fight recently, in shape, ready to bring it. If Davis had any trouble making this weight, we know he had a little bit of trouble. We don't know physically how that will manifest in tonight inside the ring. But if it does, this might be the right type of fighter in Ruiz to jump on him early and surprise him. What does Ruiz have? 18 first-round knockouts. He's got a history of going to war. This is, again, the right backdrop. War, what is it good for? It's been good a lot of times inside that ring. I want to see if Ruiz pushes the pace early, tries to make this a tougher night, tries to test if Gervonta's looking past him. You got to toe that line carefully, though, when you're fighting a puncher who can punch at the level of Davis. You being too ambitious could be the reason why you end up out of there in 1 or 2 rounds.
But he's got nothing to lose, guys, right? Nothing to lose at all. And he's been in some thrilling fights with Seiha. 2 of those.
The 2 fights that we saw
and Hasegawa in Japan. So the guy should, as Brian says, he should come out and just go for it because he's got nothing to lose. And he is a good puncher at the lighter weight. We'll see what he does at 130.
Also, guys, I know that. So Gervonta Davis is obviously the star attraction here tonight. You're watching Countdown Live, getting set for Showtime Championship Boxing coming up in just over 35 minutes. If you don't have Showtime, go to getshowtime.com to start your free trial now. We're here in Southern California. Gervonta Davis obviously is the A side. But I'm curious to see, and maybe you guys can go ahead and better expound on that, who are the fans going to get behind here? This area in Southern California, they love Mexican fighters. Santa Cruz, Mares. We saw the wars with Vasquez Marquez at Showtime Championship Boxing televised. Where are the fans going to go? Who are they going to get behind? Steve, where do you think that the percentage is when it comes to Davis and Ruiz? Because people love the Mexican come-forward fighter, and Ruiz is emblematic of that.
Well, I think all the people that came here and bought a ticket to see Abner Maris are going to be rooting for Ruiz. I think it's going to be a huge Ruiz crowd. Not a doubt in my mind. Don't be surprised if Gervonta Davis gets booed when he comes out here.
Very true. Brian, your thoughts?
I think absolutely. I think this could be a night where Ruiz rides that wave of the people behind him. And look, it's another test to see who Gervonta Davis really is. We talked a lot about the maturity that we want to see coming in. I want to see some wrinkles in the boxing game, too. Because let's not forget, guys, to compare to another fighter who was once called by Floyd Mayweather as potentially the next Floyd Mayweather, it was Adrian Broner. And he was a giant puncher at 135, and he looked like the next big thing. Well, as he moved up in weight, the power didn't carry exactly at that same level with him up to 147. Look at the knockout percentage right now that Gervonta Davis has at 130. Eventually, he's going to move up to 35, 40. He's using words like Manny Pacquiao on social media. He wants those big dates. I want to make sure he can box on that same level. And to do that, you got to go rounds. And that's something that's been very hard for Davis to do at 130 because that power is so big.
Yeah. And Ruiz could be that guy to give him some rounds here tonight on Showtime Championship Boxing, Steve.
Well, he's a good boxer. And the funny thing is, this is a fighter who we consider 2 divisions smaller than Gervonta Davis, yet he's taller, and he has a reach advantage, considerable reach advantage. So if he can get in his head that he needs to box, maybe he can be effective. I think his best chance is to go for it and initiate a brawl and hope he catches the guy.
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see how it all unfolds. Showtime Championship Boxing coming your way at the top of the hour. Steve Farhad, Brian Campbell, we are excited, revved up, getting set for a big night of action. The triple header, it's all highlighted by Gervonta Tank Davis, who's undefeated with a knockout percentage of 95%, putting his world title on the line against Hugo Ruiz, who has a knockout percentage of 75%. The fireworks are going to be in abundance. Sparks will fly here in Southern California. We look forward to seeing you on Showtime Championship Boxing. That concludes Countdown Live. On behalf of the Hall of Famer Steve Farhad and Brian Campbell, I'm Ray Flores, and we'll see you just in over 30 minutes at Showtime Championship Boxing from Southern California, Dignity Health Sports Park, the War Grounds. Expect some memorable matchups coming up in less than 30 minutes.
We have the #1 show of late night, Deez and Merrill, coming to Showtime in February. We gotta get us some new chairs. What about this?
Yeah. You wanna make a baby? Yeah.
We should make the set look like Intake at Rikers. Yeah. Who would you like to have on the show?
First guest, Kim's new baby, in utero interview. Who's doing that in late night? Nobody.
I'm a baby, wah. We can get guests to polish our shoes while we interview them. Boom. Let's go make a TV show.
Get it, baby. And I'm taking this with me too, bro.
To the moms!
The plan is starting to form. It's never boring. I'm gonna take care of it.